The face factor. In the early 1950s, Tab Hunter put his very name and his right to a private life on the line as Henry Willson rebuilt Arthur Gellion into a marquee product. The question was simple. How long could a studio-made face keep the man behind it safe? By 1955, Battlecry and Warner Brothers. Press kits locked in the smile. The right dinners and photographs ran on schedule. Yet every contract carried an unwritten clause. The private self must match the poster, and any shadow outside the frame became a risk. Backstage, reputation turned into currency. Stylists trimmed edges, publicists trimmed sentences, but at what point were they saving the career instead of the person? And in the quiet after applause, a harder problem surfaced. What happens when love won't fit the poster? Quiet love, loud walls. In 1956 to 57, Tab Hunter put his next picture and Anthony Perkins's on the line as a quiet romance threaded itself between studio walls. The question was simple. Could two leading men stay employable if Los Angeles ever connected their names? In early 1957, young love was everywhere, and an Ed Sullivan appearance kept the spotlight white-hot. Dinners at El Coyote turned into choreography. Arrive apart, sit by the wall, pay cash. Yet the louder the applause, the smaller the safe spaces became. So where could a conversation last longer than a waiter's glance? Backstage, reputation was currency and confidential. The tax collector, one clumsy photo, one doorman's call, and spring work could vanish. Unless the real rule had been written years earlier by another night entirely, the 1952 Pajama-party raid that turned a whisper into policy. Pajama-party raid and the price of exposure. In 1952, a late-night pajama party in Walnut Park made Tab Hunter's privacy and his next picture suddenly precarious when the Los Angeles police arrived. The question was simple. Could a small, disturbing the peace ticket mark a career louder than any poster? The charge sheet was minor and the room emptied fast. Yet a brief item in confidential turned a quiet citation into a story. So how do you answer a rumor stamped with a date? On studio lots, phones went oddly polite. Doors paused mid-hinge. Lunches slid to later. Reputation had a new price, and someone would be asked to pay it. From that night forward, safety meant choreography. Staggered arrivals, coded calls, jokes rehearsed for waiters, exits mapped like fire drills. But what if the wound wasn't fine at all, unless the real lesson was that, from now on, even love would need a cover? The mechanics of cover. In late 1956, Warner Brothers treated Tab Hunter's romance and upcoming billing as the collateral of a plan with Henry Willson. Dinners at the Brown Derby, separate cars, sunshine spreads in modern screen. The question was simple. How long could choreography outrun a rumor? On air, a Dot Records single was climbing the Billboard charts. Yet the same week, Hedda Hopper's column could turn a stray photograph into a story. Who decides what innocence costs when one paragraph can rearrange a month? Backstage, reputation became currency and cash its shadow. Cars idled a block away, envelopes vanished before dawn, smiles behaved like receipts. Useful, redeemable, never quite yours. It worked until the ledger demanded balance, and if a studio could move clouds with a phone call, someone else would pay the storm, unless the real question wasn't optics at all, but the trades the town preferred to keep off the books. Betrayals that never shout. In mid to late 1957, favors traded across Hollywood offices turned Tab Hunter's spring slate into the price of keeping other names clean. The question was simple. Whose headline would be spent so another name could stay clean? Racks at newsstands still smiled with modern screen, and radio kept the single spinning. Yet one quiet dinner at Chasen's, one call through a publicist, and a promised test slipped to later. Where do you appeal a decision that never lands on a desk? Fans heard momentum. Critics argued tone. But Luella Parsons read the room in inches of type, and inches were enough to move a season. Backstage, the currency turned soft. A rewrite trimming a scene. A lunch rescheduled into silence. A handshake that didn't reach the wrist. And when the bill finally arrived, it was paid in months and nerve, unless the real cost would surface only when Tab tried to build a life that refused the mask. Long, quiet, a different stage. By the late 1970s, choosing smaller stages risked the last of Tab Hunter's studio gloss in exchange for a quieter life. In 1981, he stepped into John Waters' Polyester with Divine. Could reinvention off the marquee feel less like retreat and more like return? Polyester drew midnight crowds and bent the poster boy into a sly comedian. Yet away from the lot, the work was slower, the money thinner, the rooms smaller. So what exactly was he buying back? On stage, rehearsal replaced rumor. The lines came clean. Fans heard a wry comeback. Critics argued camp versus craft, and applause sounded like permission to breathe. The risk was time itself. Seasons spent rebuilding a name without the old machinery. Dignity earned one house at a time. But what if the real rebuilding needed a different light entirely, the kind found on paper and in a camera lens he could face on his own? Before death means in time. In 2005, signing Tab Hunter Confidential meant accepting that privacy and legacy were at stake. A decade later, the 2015 documentary carried that choice to the screen. Would saying it himself, now in print, later on film, preserve the life secrecy kept taxing? The 2005 book set names and dates. In 2015, the documentary of the same title carried that ledger onto a screen. Yet whispers travel faster than records, and some headlines prefer mystery to memory. How do you quiet a rumor that feeds on silence? On camera, his voice lands steady. On the page, the tone opens like a window raised an inch at a time. Ownership became the stake. Once the archive existed, the story could stop being a weapon and become a map. At bookstores and on festival screens, audiences met a Hollywood they recognized too well: contracts, fixers, and a price for silence. But truth is measured personally. Begin with the love the town learned to name in a whisper: Anthony Perkins. Perkins, Memory, and What Remains. In 1956, keeping company with Anthony Perkins made two careers, and the right to keep a private life depend on silence. Could two leading men keep working if the town ever linked their names? By 1960, Perkins would carry Psycho for Paramount. Yet the nights that led there were mapped in side doors and borrowed names at the Chateau Marmont. So where do you place a future that can't survive a caption? At the lot, guards knew which gates to wave. In quiet rooms, the world shrank to a record turning and a curtain left still. Headlines read choices like verdicts, but memory edits differently. Rooms, voices, a laugh from another floor. The plant was time itself, months spent learning how to pass without disappearing. And when the past finally demanded tender, it wasn't payment in gossip or pity. The cost would come due in something harder to counterfeit: the truth. The Cost and the Dividend of Truth. By March 2015, legacy hinged on owning the record for Tab Hunter, first fixed in the 2005 memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, then carried to SXSW by the film of the same name. Could truth pay back what silence had spent? A named ledger of dates and deals replaced rumor. Yet whispers outpace archives, so where does calm begin? For readers, the voice felt measured, pages opening like a window, inch by inch. In theaters, the camera held steady long enough to make repair feel practical, not dramatic. The Dividend arrived quietly. Conversations that no longer detoured, rooms that no longer demanded a performance, sleep that didn't negotiate. The cost stayed visible too: roles not returned, seasons already spent. Ownership, not spectacle, turned the past from a weapon into a map others could walk without bleeding. But if truth changes the accounting, what does it change in the image we keep, the poster, or the face that outlives it? What remains? Tab Hunter outlived his posters and outlasted his legend with truth. Not a final confession, a life's archive put in order while he could still choose the labels. Hollywood loved the mask. History kept the face. The rest stayed in basement files, where headlines live for a day. His honesty lasts longer. It lingers in the way his story is told now, less as a warning and more as a compass, a needle that no longer shakes when the room gets loud. He did not defeat the system, few do. He named it, refused its silence, and left a door open behind him. Step through, and the air feels different, clearer, breathable. That may be the most human legacy a star can leave, not light without shadow, but light that finally includes the person who stood in it.